Rosco, you're clear to start. The track's all yours. Best luck, guys.
Ta-ta-ta.
Imagine being able to sit in a car and out-accelerate Concorde, or travel faster than a jumbo jet.
Don't go anywhere near the front end.
Imagine covering a kilometre in 3 seconds, or a mile in 5, in the blinking of an eye. Driving at these speeds, we're talking about living life on the edge. We're talking about danger, extreme danger. This is Lake Gairdner in the South Australian outback. It's a salt lake which stretches 150 kilometres, that's about 100 miles, from end to end. It's baked rock hard by a relentless sun and scorching winds which push the temperatures up past the 50 degrees Celsius mark. It's a bit like being in a fan-forced oven. It's also the danger zone for an Australian called Rosco McGlashan, who for the past 11 years has wanted to be the fastest man on Earth.
As far as we're concerned, it's in the bag. All we need, as I say, is 4 hours of perfect weather with no breeze, a situation where we can just go out there and run the car and get our 4 runs in. We'll get a world record.
So what does it take to break a world land speed record? A used Mirage jet engine, a fiberglass and Kevlar shell, 22 kilometres of track, and the nerve to sit behind the wheel of a monster which has power enough to travel faster than the speed of sound. This is Aussie Invader 2, possibly the world's fastest car, certainly the most technologically advanced car ever to grace this ancient land.
Personality plus, yeah, this car is a part of us, you see. It's not just Ross's car. He owns the tangible bits, but we own the memories.
You know it's going to put on a good show. It seems to smile at you first thing in the morning. You know it's ready, and it's sitting there crouching, ready to jump.
But trying to become the world's fastest man is a dangerous gamble, not only with money, but with life. More people have been killed trying to set land speed records than have actually broken them. And this is Rosco McGlashan's 3rd attempt.
Boss,
Welcome to the section.
we got a track.
We got a race track, haven't we?
You better believe it. You big luck.
McGlashan and his team first came to Lake Gairdner in December 1993. Full of hope, they were determined to take home the world land speed record.
There you go, buddy.
Left 50. Angles, I'll try.
Run you from the 12.5K.
This was the first time on the salt for McGlashan and his Aussie Invader 2. Gradually pushing her speeds higher and higher, she was almost uncontrollable. It was as if she had a will of her own. McGlashan simply couldn't steer her.
Didn't gain a real lot. Would he increase the rate?
No, I don't think so, mate. Shit, she's cool.
She's hairy?
Shit, I was losing it. I just kept on it and stayed staring at it, but it's going like this all over the joint.
Travelling at close to 600 kilometres an hour, the steering problem was potentially fatal. One erratic move of the steering wheel could send Rosco McGlashan into a deadly spin.
So the biggest problem we have with these solid wheels is they weigh around 50 kilos each, and the gyroscopic force in those wheels is pretty awesome. When we get too far out of shape and you're trying to steer the thing back, actually just the gyroscopic force that the wheels generate could tip the car over.
The steering problems were diagnosed as being caused by the front wheels. Unlike the rear wheels, which were V-shaped, the front were flat. Based on the design of the wheels used by the current world land speed record holder, Richard Noble, they were machined from solid aluminium with no rubber tyres. They were more suited to running on sand than the concrete hard salt plains of South Australia.
I'm explaining to the guys, I'm trying to explain to them just how bad the car is, and I don't really think anyone believed me.
At $20,000 a wheel, it was an expensive mistake.
So I'm trying to tell the guys and exactly how bad the situation is, and I said what we need to do, we've got a spare back wheel, let's take the spare back wheel and put it on the front.
And that's just what they did.
This is going to come that way. Sorry,
The only other thing they could do was keep their fingers crossed.
Well, I tell you what, there was a different man sitting in that cockpit after that run, matey. Yeah. Walk down there, there's a big smile on the face that, yes,
It worked. The big blue monster was responding, but it wasn't perfect, and Aussie Invader 2 still wanted to do her own thing. She was still extremely unstable, but Rosco McGlashan's luck wasn't in. There was more trouble ahead.
Okay, guys, we've got trouble. Yeah, I've got fuel vapor or something coming into the car, mate.
Rosco McGlashan's run of bad luck continued. Aussie Invader 2 can only run safely in winds of less than 5 kilometres an hour. And as if the spirit of the lake was against him, the winds were now gaining in strength.
Just, it's a bit gusty out this way, so I think the 700 Ks could be a bit of a problem with the gusting winds we got.
With all the problems, McGlashan was becoming frustrated and impatient.
Hey, all right, you mate. I'll just have a look when we get out there, eh?
There were now 15-knot winds blowing, and against the advice of his crew, McGlashan went out to try another run. Some crew members thought he wouldn't come back.
Station calling 5 control, say again.
Ross just wants to go black. That's what he wants to do, but you've got to consider the safety aspects. This is what the crew are considering.
The wind proved too much for the car, and McGlashan had to call it off.
Rosco, are you okay?
Yeah, no worries, mate. Sorry, we lost it off the line there, mate.
Okay?
Yeah, I lost it off the line. Sorry, mate.
You got sideways?
The winds appeared to be, from here, appeared to be running straight down the course, and I thought, well, it's not a problem, be right behind us. When we got down that end, it was actually running virtually nearly side onto us. And the crew were definitely not happy about doing the run in the car, but I thought, well, geez, if we just get the thing up and running and come back, get a bit of speed up coming this way, it shouldn't affect us, but I proved wrong.
Get out and have a go.
Yeah.
What does it look like, mate?
Yeah, not bad.
Time was running out. The wind which blew him off course was also blowing up a storm. A huge front was coming from the south.
Rosco, it's Mike. We're all ready for a start, mate. I'm handing you over to Pete.
Thank you.
It was December the 13th. Rosco McGlashan is a superstitious man. He only wears black underpants when he's doing a run. The barrel at the 13-kilometre mark is numbered 73. But despite this, at 13 minutes past the 13th hour on this unlucky day, a day on which McGlashan said he wouldn't drive, Rosco McGlashan climbed back into the cockpit of Aussie Invader 2 for another run. It almost proved fatal.
Thanks, mate. That's good. Start.
The continual snaking of the car because of the bad wheel design had caused the bearings to burn out. The result was near disaster. At 600 kilometres an hour, McGlashan lost control. The car began to slide sideways and head straight for the cameras. McGlashan and the camera crew were only saved by the parachutes which kept the car straight, preventing it from going into a deadly spin.
A little bit out of line down here, but we're all right, mate. We're good.
Oh, well, I never really wanted to run the car at all on the 13th. Yeah, I preferred not to run today at all, that's for sure.
It just seems that everything has been really out here to test us out.
That night, McGlashan and his crew worked feverishly. The plan, to swap another back wheel to the front. But Lady Luck hadn't finished with the Aussie Invader team just yet.
There's been a situation like it where we're standing out in the middle of a lake with a big bushfire on one side, started by lightning, and lightning zapping all the way around us, and it's raining everywhere.
The next morning, the whole lake was awash. They had no alternative but to pack up and go home. But not to be beaten, Rosco McGlashan and his team would return within 3 months for another attempt at becoming the world's fastest man. Rosco McGlashan began his encounter with speed while he was still at school, preferring to tinker with a go-kart than to sit in class. He graduated to speedway racing, then to a rocket bike.
Well, shortly before it was completed, they actually, the mob that controls drag racing in Australia, notified me by letter saying the thing was banned, that I weren't allowed to take it to any drag strips in Australia.
By the beginning of the 80s, he had his first jet car.
Both shoots have now failed, and our first thoughts are that Ross may be lying seriously injured in the bush. There's a rush of reporters and photographers to the scene. The car has stopped just 2 metres short of a strong wire fence, which would surely have killed Rosco McGlashan. All that saved him was a mound of dirt.
Lost both shoots there. That one tore to bits and the other one tore off. You're okay? Yeah.
This was the beginning of the battle to break the world land speed record. Over the next 10 years, scores of volunteers and his wife Cheryl would help Rosco McGlashan realise a dream that many people thought was impossible. For an ordinary working class bloke to build a car that would travel at 1,100 kilometres an hour. A car that had the potential to break the sound barrier. It's March 1994. The McGlashans and their team are back on Lake Geerden in South Australia.
Yeah, it's got to be a bit scary going the other way, mate.
After the failure of their previous attempts, they are hopeful this time Lady Luck will smile on them.
Yeah, right to that. 2 minutes, Pete.
But historically, the odds are stacked against them. The last time a land speed record was set in Australia was more than 30 years ago in 1963, when Englishman Donald Campbell set the Australian land speed record at 640 kilometres, that's 403 miles an hour. The rules for setting a world land speed record are quite simple. Basically, you travel through a measured mile in one direction, turn around and return within an hour. Then an average speed is taken. But of course, when you're travelling at close to the speed of sound, then you need a track longer than a mile. This one is 22 kilometres, that's 14 miles long. It's about the same size as Manhattan Island in New York. Now the reason for this is to give Rosco McGlashan enough room so as he can build up his speed to go through the measured mile as fast as he possibly can, but also so that when he reaches the other end, he's got enough room to stop. McGlashan's strategy for breaking the world land speed record was to do it in stages. To make it seem like a Sunday drive, his first step, an assault on Donald Campbell's Australian land speed record.
That looked really spectacular, looked really beautiful.
It had been almost too easy.
Okay, Rosco, we've got an unofficial CAMS time on the kilometre, mate, at 707 kilometres per hour.
All he had to do was a similar speed in the other direction, and the Australian land speed record would be his.
It's a walk in the park, matey.
Okay, let's go, eh?
Okay, all you got to do is keep it down the line and we're off and running.
But then, things began to go wrong. 3 kilometres ahead of him was a thin sheet of water. No problems, until his parachutes ripped off. McGlashan was in trouble as Aussie Invader 2 hit the water at more than 500 kilometres an hour. Rosco McGlashan knew the car was damaged, but he wasn't worried.
Oh, man. Good on you, Don. Good work, mate. Good work, thanks.
As far as he and the crew were concerned, the Australian record was in the bag.
Yeah, not a problem, mate. We're just saying we probably set a water speed record too, mate, so...
But there was bad news waiting for him.
Good. You heard the news? Mate, we didn't get a time on the return trip. The 10k timer didn't trip. Eagle went out.
Down and in the dumps for probably about 5 or 10 minutes after disappointment, and then
he's back again. The determination of the guy is boundless.
True to his form, within a week he was back in the saddle and had claimed the Australian land speed record. But the excitement was short-lived. The unpredictable moods of Lake Gairdner had cut this trip short, stopping him from achieving his goal of claiming the world land speed record.
Lake Gairdner is one of those extra special places that you sometimes find in your life. It's a magical, mystical sort of a place. The feeling that you get when you stand on the lake and watch the sun set, or see the billions of stars which crowd the night sky, is spiritual.
Everything.
February 1995. It's been almost a year since Rosco McGlashan has sat in the cockpit of Aussie Invader 2.
It's great to be back in the office.
Hopes of a quick record-breaking dash were high, but the spirit of the lake had other plans. It was the closest McGlashan had come to death. The crew were on the salt before dawn. The first strange event, according to Cheryl McGlashan, was the way Rosco was singing as the car was being towed out to the start line.
You see me on the streets.
It was a very weird sensation even coming out this morning, and Ross sang a very strange song, which I've never heard him sing before.
And I got this feeling, and I said, I wish I could talk to somebody because I think we should really call this off. But this song that I heard this morning, it wasn't Rosco. It wasn't his voice, if you understand what I mean.
The morning just kept getting stranger.
5 minutes, Mike. Pete just said his radio's acting up.
Now, I had 2 radios out there that would not communicate. I could hear, but I couldn't transmit. Came back in here and Mike says, hey, he says, what's wrong with these? They're fine, look. Yak, 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 yak. I said, mate, they just didn't work.
The start controller's radio, every time he tried to key it up, he couldn't speak to me. And he couldn't speak to Rosco.
I suppose it's an eeriness, it's an unknown, it's why, it's there's no logical explanation for the things that have happened.
Roger, start clearance is okay.
Rosco McGlashan sped along the track, hoping to clock 900 kilometres an hour. But his speed wasn't recorded. Another unexplained happening. The computer which records the car's performance failed to operate properly.
What was even stranger was when we started the computer up, instead of coming up on today's date, which is showing now, the 8th of February 1995, it decided it was going to come up on the 1st of January 1990 at midnight.
So how do you feel about a return run?
Oh, I've got to do a return
run. Yeah, okay.
At the turnaround, the unexplained continued, as if the spirit of the lake or some other unseen presence was trying to stop them from another run. Aussie Invader 2 simply refused to start.
Yeah, got a wee problem with the start, mate. We need Keith and the boys back here, buddy.
Eventually, the engine ignited and Rosco McGlashan headed south for his second run of the morning. As the big blue car accelerated towards the 400 km/h mark, Rosco McGlashan knew Aussie Invader 2 was out of control.
Definitely, I knew I was going to hit the thing. I heard the bang and I thought, oh, geez, I had visions of stopping and the bloody side of the body being ripped out.
The spirit of the lake is saying, hey, now's not the time.
It's, I've had the feeling out here before that there's somebody else around here. and he's just making sure that we do things properly.
Following these strange events, the crew was extremely edgy.
Oh, at the moment, I'm still quite uptight inside, yeah.
And careful not to talk about them in front of McGlashan. They were afraid such stories would affect his nerve, put him under strain, and his life in danger.
Like falling off a bike, you've got to get him out there again to give him the confidence, and which he's got plenty of. It's just getting it back again.
So don't get too uptight too quick. Right?
Yeah.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah, okay. Might have a beer for brekkie, I think.
To these people, he is more than their leader. He is their friend.
Probably the most dynamic, motivated bloke I've ever met. Very absorbing sort of a fella. You start talking to him and you become involved with him and everything he's doing.
Oh, he's a special man. Yeah, he's a special man.
I mean, the man's so enthusiastic. You've got to admire him. And he just sucked me in straight in, and I said, yeah, I'll stay.
Yeah, he's got a dream, and he wants to do it, and he will do it.
The determination of the guy is boundless. It's like this bloody big lake, you know.
The exceptional man. He's got something about him that just grips your imagination, and he takes you a ride and you just want to go with him. There's never a day where you want to get off.
Whether the collision with the witch's hat was due to the intervention of some unseen hand, or just bad luck, it gave the crew 3 days to try and figure out why the car was still not steering correctly.
If we shift it 5 mil to the front, it'll shift there.
As on so many occasions before, the mood of Lake Gairdner was changing again. Bad weather was forecast, and the Aussie Invader crew were now under pressure to come up with a result.
What the f*** is this?
Oh, he's in the soft stuff. He's in the soft stuff.
Yeah, right there, Rosco.
Yeah, mate.
A number of people have said, you know, if it was easy, everybody would do it, but this just proves the determination of one man to do what he really believes in.
Things seem to be going from bad to worse. More runs, more problems.
What's up?
No, I don't know, mate.
Was the steering still faulty, or was McGlashan having trouble seeing where he was going?
I can't relate to whether it's a visual problem or a skating problem with the car, so I'm going back this way now and I'll have another feel of it then.
Alright. What sort of speed do you think you did?
Oh, I got no idea.
For 2 years, the Aussie Invader crew had battled with Lake Gairdner, but nothing they had experienced before could prepare them for the final sequence of events. Rosco McGlashan and Aussie Invader 2 had smashed into a timing device at over 800 kilometres an hour. Parts of the infrared sensor on top of a steel pole ripped into the fiberglass shell, burying itself deep inside, while other parts were sucked into the jet engine. Rosco McGlashan miraculously cheated death by millimetres. He was uninjured, but the car was crippled, and their attempt on the world land speed record was over.
Yeah, we're done. We're done this time.
It's in here, mate. Talk to you later.
Yeah, it does hurt. It does hurt. Not what we expected to finish off in the end.
It's a shame that it had to end this way. We'd rather just see the car not be able to do it rather than to see the car damaged like this.
We haven't finished yet. Mate.
You'd have to rebuild the whole engine. It's virtually wiped out the compressor. We've had a major flame out because of the ingestion.
If he said, right, we're going to take this to pieces now, I'll be right there.
I just hope Ross will come and do it again, because hopefully I'll be there.